going to formally introduce Mr. Bacoate. Got notes. So again, Mr. Bacoate is a native of Asheville, North Carolina. And his topic today is historic Asheville and the Black community. So Mr. Bacoate is a treasure of Asheville, and he is a local and statewide civil rights era leader. Now he came to Asheville as a youth, but then he left and came back, went to the military and did more, and then came back and became the general manager of AFRAM, the largest black-owned manufacturing site in the history, black-owned, in the history of Asheville. And AFRAM changed owners and names multiple times, but Mr. Bacoate eventually became the owner, and the new name became MB Disposable, because they were the manufacturer of disposable protective clothing. Now, Mr. Bacoate is also the organizer, as I mentioned earlier, of the Skyview Open at the Asheville Municipal Golf Course. Now, that's an annual event that has been the launching pad for many pioneering black golfers. And that continues today, and he pretty much single-handedly facilitated the tournament, and probably has for several years. Yes. Because he's got energy beyond most of the, teeny boppers, okay? So anyway, he is the one who's responsible for that, and I'm so grateful that he said yes. Oh, let me also tell you one other thing. About 3 weeks ago, I was having my car detailed. You didn't know this, Mr. Bacoate. But I ran into Mr. Bacoate's son, Matthew the third?
Third, yes.
Third. And I was telling him how excited I was that he was going to come here and speak to us and how amazing his dad is. And he said, yes, he is, Dad. I want him to slow down. I said, yeah, no, he's got a lot more to give. And after we had this conversation for a while, he said, Sherry, he's mine. You can't have him. Can't you just borrow him for a little while? Come on. So anyway, he's allowing us to have his dad for a while. And so what he's going to do is he's going to share with us. And then this will open the way for discussion and questions and sharing of your own. But I'm just going to let Mr. Bacoate do his thing and just enjoy that he has to share with us. So if we please honor and give gratitude to Mr. Bacoate showing up. Thank you.
Sherry, thank you so very, very much for that very kind, and you went a little bit further in the introduction than I wanted you to, because that means I've really got to fill the bill this afternoon. But I thoroughly appreciate being here with all of you. I thoroughly appreciate being here with you earlier. And being here earlier with you, my presentation was already in my mind and in my heart. But something was said during the service that moved me. And what I'm going to talk about, had we applied this, we wouldn't have gone through what many of us in the minority community did. And that was, we are better together.
Yes.
When I heard that, it just really did something to my heart, and believe me, I've got a tough heart.
Can we hear him?
But those two words softened it, and it also opened up my mind, and it caused my mind to venture back many years before. Here in Asheville, North Carolina. And Asheville is no different from other places across our country. Back during the 1940s, later 40s and 1950s and 1960s, 1970s. We had such a difficult time here in America in so many of these areas. And had we just been able to pull up two words and transmit them between us better together, we wouldn't have gone through all of it, but we did. And here we are today. So I'm going to share with you just briefly about Asheville, North Carolina, and how it was different from a lot of the other areas. You know, back in the latter 50s and 1960s, we had a lot of inconvenience for people in America. It was inconvenient to white people, it was inconvenient to Negroes. And please, you all, as I state to you, Negroes, understand that the era in which I was born and the era in which I lived, what we talked about and the way we identified ourselves, it was colored. Some of you may not know about this, but colored. It was Negro. And then we moved along until it became Afro-American in the early part of the 1960s. So we've got colored, we've got Negro, Afro-American. And then in 1969, it became black, and it didn't go anywhere. In 1971, James Brown came out with, "I'm black and I'm proud." Now we've got black. We moved along to 1989. Jesse Jackson of the Rainbow Coalition said that we don't want to be called colored, we don't want to be called black, we don't want to be called Afro-American, we want a Negro, we want to be called African-American. It was 1989. It didn't go anywhere. 1994, Rainbow Coalition again in Chicago, Illinois. Jesse Jackson came and said, "We want to be African American." He said that 74 people had gotten together, and that's what they decided. So now we're African American. So do you all, you heard me? How many different identities there were? And it shouldn't have to be that many. We are better together. We're better if we could just refer to ourselves as human beings in some form.
Amen.
Because as I look around this room, as I think about what I just experienced earlier, when I looked around and saw the faces, the smiling faces, and I saw truth in those faces, yes, we're better together. Boy, it seems like I've adopted that as a theme. But let me move forward. I want to talk a little bit about, because now, this day and time, we have got, across this country, there are all types of problems with the police, and it's defund the police, get rid of the police, all over our country. But I'm going to start here in Asheville, North Carolina, and go back to 1947 when the first Negro was hired as a police officer. Mr. Delaney Horn, who was the educator, he also was the physical ed coach at Stevensley High School. There was a group of Negroes who had gotten together and was leaning on City Hall, we need a Negro police officer on the block. The block is, if you're, it has disappeared, you all see it, it's to my left, it's on the wall. The last time I saw it was on the floor. But it's on the wall. Well, now that's the block. And on that block, there's where it says Eagle Street, if you can see that. That was the area that Mr. Horn was to patrol. They hired him from the high school because he had a college education. While it's reported that many of the white officers only had a high school education. they placed Mr. Horn on the block with what is called a billy stick. I don't know if you all know what that is. That's the one that the police wear. With instructions to only arrest Negroes in the event that it was necessary. He was told that if a white person ventured into the area, to never arrest them. Mr. Horn is an educator. Mr. Horn went into this job with one thing in mind. He was going to do an honest job. So therefore, as he went about his duty, and he did have to arrest some folk. I happened to be present. I wasn't one of the ones who was arrested, but I was present when it happened a number of times. Mr. Horn was a well-built person, and he would just get them in the back of their belt and walk them up to where the current police department is located. That was also the jail. And he would walk them there. From time to time, a white person would come down Biltmore Avenue, maybe had just a little bit, one too many, venture into Eagle Street and the block, and if it became necessary, Mr. Horn arrested him. Which means that doesn't go too well with the powers that be within the police department. You're not to arrest white people. Mr. Horn did. He did his job. It was just so that unfortunate that Mr. Horn met with an untimely, very healthy person, but he met an untimely death. There was a gentleman by the name of Gilbert Sly who had been hired as the police officer as well. And by the time that he came on, they gave him a pistol. So he had a pistol and a billy stick. Behind Mr. Gilbert Sly came Mr. J.E. Fleming. He was given a pistol also. And fourth was Mr. Lehman Williams. So we've got 4 Negroes on the police force. Now the block, again. Now we got 4 on the block. And if there happened to be a call out into the neighborhood, into a black neighborhood, Negro neighborhood, the white police officer would drive the patrol car from the police station down to pick up the officer, and they would go to make the service call. That was the way that the police officers had to operate. These officers served with honor, and more officers were hired. And we go down through the years, and these officers were doing a great job, but receiving no rank. As a matter of fact, we did not have a sergeant in our Asheville Police Department for 17 years before one was promoted to sergeant. Then finally, 2 Negro officers were promoted to sergeant. It was unheard of to have an officer, meaning a lieutenant or a captain or a major in the police department, Negro, until until 1991 under Sheriff Charlie Long. The first Negro was hired and promoted to lieutenant, the first in the history of Asheville. And the way he became lieutenant was that he was working for the Asheville City Police Department. He was a sergeant, and I was a part of Charlie Long's campaign. We were able to convince Willie Allen to come over to the sheriff department. After certain training, he became a lieutenant. So that gave us a lieutenant and first law enforcement officer. Shortly thereafter, Walt Robinson became a lieutenant in the Asheville Police Department. So we go along until 2012. We've got 2 Negroes that can identify with attaining the rank of lieutenant. And finally, Asheville hired Mr. William Anderson as its first Negro police chief. Asheville moved on up in the law enforcement ranks with Police Chief William Anderson. From all indication, Chief William Anderson was serving well. But all of a sudden, in 2 years' time, things started breaking up loose and coming apart. And what was it? His son was driving a vehicle about 2 o'clock in the morning and ran on one of the street dividers on Montfort Avenue. And he called his daddy. His daddy went out to see him about him, which any father would do. And that became a big issue. And Chief Anderson's service didn't last too much longer after that. He retired. He had already been police chief in Greenville, South Carolina, so he had enough time, and he retired from the Asheville City Police Department. That's our experience here when it comes to law enforcement. But let's take a look at politics in Asheville. 1948, Mr. Forrest Hardy, owner of Your Cab on Eagle Street, again, the block, decided he was going to run for city council. So the word went out that Mr. Forrest Hardy is going to run for city council. He owns Your Cab. 3 people came off of Biltmore Avenue one evening and ordered a cab to go on Mountain Street. There were 3 white persons. Mr. Hardy drove them there. When they arrived on Mountain Street, they ordered him to take them on Bacoate Mountain. And once they arrived on Bacoate Mountain, the 3 men got out and got sticks and whipped Mr. Hardy. Mr. Hardy returned to Eagle Street. He told the story. He didn't call law enforcement in on it, but he did drop out of the race of being a candidate for city council in 1948. In 1951, Dr. Hendricks, a local Negro dentist, filed and was unsuccessful. It wasn't until 1968 when Dr. John P. Holt and attorney Reuben Daly ran for the Democratic nomination for city council. Attorney Reuben Daly survived the run. They didn't have a runoff. He won from the first primary with 3,233 votes. Dr. Holt had 3,231 votes, a 2-vote difference. And Dr. Holt decided that he would not call for a runoff and allowed Attorney Daly to go ahead. Attorney Daly became the first Negro city council person. He met with an untimely passing, and from 1968 to 1976, I ran for city council and 7 other Negroes. I lost by 3 votes, and I didn't call for a runoff. I ran again in 1978. I received 50% more votes. I lost by 49 votes. I decided to give it up and continue to work with other people in politics. And working in politics caused not only the governor, but people beyond the governorship to recognize some of the things that I have been doing here. So let's move into some economic development stuff. I've been a person who have been extremely busy all of my life. And after service, coming back to Asheville, North Carolina, and deciding that I wanted to do some real work. I wanted to work at the Oteen Hospital, which is the VA hospital, but they wouldn't hire me because they said they didn't hire Negroes in the position that I applied for, and they asked me to apply at Bethesda, Maryland, or either Castle Point, New York. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay in Asheville, so therefore no job. I went to American Inca for employment, and they didn't hire me at that time. So what I did, I found a part-time job from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the afternoon at Boston Bakery on Patton Avenue. I followed that with a part-time job at the Chamber of Commerce from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Chamber of Commerce located in the City Hall building. And that was followed by a full-time job from 12 o'clock at night until 8 in the morning at Starling Bowling Center. That third job came about as a result of Mr. Jesse Gibson, who was well known in Asheville Stevens Lee High School. He was an athlete, outstanding football player. He is now the manager of the Colored Employment Office, who came to the City Hall where I was one morning and said, "Little boy," that was his name for me. He's huge, I'm not. And he said, "Little boy, I need for you to do me a favor. There's a new bowling center on Kenilworth Road and would like for you to go out and talk to them. They're in need of a custodian. They're paying $55 a week. It's 6 days a week. It's 12 hours a night." I said, "Jesse, I have 2 jobs." He said, "I know that, but I need you to go." I went out. I was hired. So now I'm working the 3 jobs around the clock. My sleep was from about 7:30 at night until 11. Then I'm up and I'm ready to go on my job at 12. I worked, this is October of 1959. I decided that what I was going to do, work it until Christmas and get that extra money and quit. By the time that December rolled around, I had the job down to a science. By 3:30, my work was done, so I didn't go anywhere. In January of 1960, the manager came to him and said, "The bowling center is open 24 hours a day." They had a night manager. And the manager came to me and said, "Matt, we would like for you to take the night manager's job. We're going to hire another person to replace you, and the night manager is going to go to the assistant manager at daytime." I told him I wasn't interested. A month later, the owner of the bowling center waited on me until I arrived at work, and he said, "Matthew, I understand that they offered you the night manager's job, and you said you didn't want it. Well, I want to say to you that we want you to take it. You shouldn't be doing what you're doing. We're going to hire somebody to do that. And what we want you to do is take the night manager's job." This is on a Friday. He said, "About 2 o'clock on Monday. Please let me know you don't work anymore if you don't." At 1:48 on Monday, I called him and accepted the job and became night manager, Starling Bowling Center. That meant that Mr. Irvin and I and others and the managers had to get together on how the duties are going to be handled by a Negro at night taking money from white people. One of the rules was the new person that would be hired to serve in the job that I had, which was custodian, that I would set up a signal so that if anything happened during the night, I could give him a signal and he could call the police. The other thing, they were going to have the police close by on Kenilworth Road in case anything did happen. We had a number of different measures put together in order for me to be successful in the job. So I'm on the job, and the first night I happened to have my back turned to the lanes. Something said turn around, turned around, and there was a gentleman kicking another gentleman. And oh gosh, I was never supposed to say anything or go near them. But I guess my military instinct kicked in, and as they came up near where I was, I said, "Chief." When I said chief, he popped me at the floor. I was off balance, and as I jumped up, he pulled a knife out. Instead of giving the signal to the custodian whom I could see, I went behind the counter. I dialed right in front of the person, the police. The police was nearby. This is already set up. And I got the tag number. They left. Got the tag number, and they caught them. The next morning, I'm at the Chamber of Commerce, and the owner and the manager came to the chamber at about 10 o'clock and said, "Matthew, I understand you had a problem last night." "No, I didn't have a problem." "So you look good." "Okay. Well, they found the person that hit you, and we're going to court. We don't want you to go." They gave the person 30 days. The reason that they didn't want me to get involved in any way is because I was going to be out that night servicing folk, and you know, people had a tendency to rise up and come against you, so I didn't want to do that. But to move from that to I became, assistant manager. Now, the bowling center's on closed on Sunday, so I decided to talk to the owner. "Will you allow Negroes to bowl on Sunday? You're closed." You could imagine the expression on his face when this happened. And he didn't look down one time, but he did look to the side. And he said, Matthew, are you serious? You want Negroes to bowl out here? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, we couldn't do that because we've got debt. And he started talking about his debt. Okay, that didn't go anywhere. About 4 weeks later, he waited on me, Mr. Irvin, the owner, waited on me to come to the bowling center, and he called me into his office and said, Matthew, talk to the owners, and we decided that if you bring some of your good friends out here, and when they come on the inside, lock the door, do not allow white people in, we're going to give you a chance to do that. Thank you. I immediately, the next day, took some time to go to all of the Negro teachers, the Negro business persons on the block, and other places to tell them that now you can come to Star Lane Bowling Center and bowl. We're going to teach you. That was unbelievable. Then finally a few people believed it, and by Sunday, when the time came, we had 12 lanes, 24 lane house. We have 12 lanes of Negroes that didn't know how to bowl. But the method to my madness was there were several gentlemen who worked at Asheville Bowling Center on Merriman Avenue who set pins, and they could, in the evenings, learn how to bowl at the White Bowling Center. It's closed, okay? So I utilized those three people to help me teach those when I was inundated on that first Sunday night. This went on for quite a few weeks. It became 24 lanes on Sunday night. And then I looked one Sunday night, and there's about 14 to 16 white people that had been they bowled all the time at the door. So I looked, and I went out, and I opened the door, and the first gentleman I knew, he said, Matthew, can we come in? I said, come right in. They came in, and they stood around because all the lanes were taken. And as soon as one lane became vacant, group said, can we go down? Go down. They stayed there until all of them had an opportunity to bowl. And here we've got white people and Negroes in 1960 bowling together in Star Lane Bowling Center. You are not to allow that to happen was my mandate from the owner. So approximately 2 months later, he called me in, Mr. Irvin, the owner. And he said, Matthew, I understand that you have white people and Negroes bowling together. I said, yes, sir. He said, that was not our deal. I said, no, sir. He said, I don't know what to say about this. I said, Mr. Irvin, I said, has there been a problem? He said, no. I said, have the income that you derive on Sunday night helped at all? He said, yes. It helped us accelerate our payments. I said, Mr. Irvin, I don't see a problem. He said, well, Matthew, what are you trying to do? I said, Mr. Irvin, I don't see a problem. He said, you're trying to integrate the bowling center? I said, I don't see anything wrong with it. He said, well, I tell you what. Do you have a person who is well-dressed, good temperament, know how to bowl well, that can come out in prime time and bowl? Yes, sir. So we went through that process. I had one of the gentlemen that helped me train the Negroes. I on a weekend, on Friday when Mr. Irvin and I were talking, we met during the weekend. We set it up for him to go out and bowl on Tuesday. He went out and bowled on Tuesday, 6 o'clock at the time we had set. No problem whatsoever. He went out again on Friday. No problem whatsoever. So the second week we tried 2 Negroes who went out on Tuesday, went out on Friday, and they bowled without incident. After that, Mr. Irvin called me in and he said, Matthew, do you know what you've done? No, sir. He said, you have integrated the bowling center. The story, I didn't have that many, but I've got a few hard copies that I brought, and you all can do what you can with them, but I don't mind sharing those with you. But that's first public accommodation integrated in Asheville and Buncombe County without any fluff. That's the way it happened. Now, have y'all forgotten? I work for the Chamber of Commerce at the same time. Have you forgotten? Boss? Okay? But what happened to Boss? I had to quit Boss because the Chamber job became full-time. Now I'm working full-time, bowling center, and Chamber. Mr. Irvin is one of the leading officials in the Chamber of Commerce. So the word had gotten to the Chamber about what happened at Starling Bowling Center. Negroes and white people bowling together. They already had the word to the Chamber, but they didn't say anything about it. I learned this later. But at this time, Chamber officials came to me and say, Matthew, we heard what happened at Starling Bowling Center. Said, is there anything that you can suggest that the Chamber can do to help facilitate integration? This is the Chamber of Commerce. Latter part 1960, inquiry to a Negro custodian, mail clerk for them, who had brought about change at Starling Bowling Center, brought about change in city and the county, Asheville and Buncombe. The Chamber asking, what can we do? Yes, I know what you can do. So this was Richard K. Dagenhart that inquired about it. He called in several other people, including county officials and city officials, and we had a meeting for me to tell them what can happen and how it can come about. And I recall sitting around the board table. I'm sitting around the board table at the Chamber with Chamber officials. I can recall that there was a brown paper bag on the boardroom table. And as they were talking among themselves after my presentation, I told the bag open and I wrote on there, they won't come. And I turned it around to Rich K. Dagenhart, who was the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, and he read it. And he showed it to somebody else, and they all looked like, well, what is this? So what I was saying to them is this. The question was around the table, what problems will we run into in trying to forge ahead integration? The membership, 1,200 and some members, the hotels and restaurant owners. You know, the word was out that we tear up every place we go. That preceded us wherever we went. So that was the question on many of these folks' mind. We get involved, how can we curtail that type of activity? My answer to that was they won't come, meaning when I had to explain it to them, that meant that, number one, Negro are prideful people. Number two, Negroes didn't have the money to rush out and inundate their restaurants and motels and hotels. So therefore, you all don't have to worry about being converged on your hotels and your motels and your restaurants, because it's not going to happen that way. So what happened over several weeks, they put together committees. The Chamber of Commerce put together committees, and they developed what is called dog and pony shows. And that meant that they would take Chamber members, that's 1,269 members. They chose the cream of the crop of those members and put them together in little committees. And they met with the major hotels first, the 4 major hotels, George Vanderbilt, Battery Park, Lane Green, and Grove Park Inn. Met with them first and asked them, told them what they were planning to do, and asked them if they would consider being a part of it, because they needed them. And I recall the first meeting because I was sitting where I could observe. I wasn't at the table in this particular meeting. I could sit where I could observe, and I remember Bill Turner, who was the manager of Vanderbilt Hotel, said he'd have to talk to his manager. Lane Green, the same thing. Battery Park, George Chumbley, who was the manager of Battery Park, jumped up from the table and said, my father-in-law, who was Maurice Puckett, who owned Battery Park, said, my father-in-law will never allow a nigger to sleep in the Battery Park Hotel, and he left. That left Grove Park Inn. Grove Park Inn said we'd have to talk to our management. Okay. From that, they went to the major motels and restaurants. And certain people became key folks in it. For instance, Harry Bloomberg, Harris Cadillac, was one of the committee people who talked to the other folks to try to convince them. There was a person by the name of Harry Winter, Winter's Department Store downtown. He was another one of the key people that worked in the small group where they had these dog and pony shows. They went through the entire membership. Over a period of 3-4 years, this is going on. Nothing being said on the outside about it, but this is what the chamber was doing. Now, at the same time that this was going on, there was a group from Stevens Lee that formed and called themselves A-Score. And in latter part of 61, they started doing some demonstrations like they did all over the country, you know, going to the 5 and 10 cent stores, the sit-in deals. Well, they did it here. And they went to Newberry's and Cress's and Woolworth, Eckers Drugstore, Plaza Theater. Plaza Theater happened to be owned by Sam Irvin, who owned the bowling center. They went and tried to gain entrance. And of course, you know what happened. Nothing happened. Mrs. Turman, who worked for the Plaza Theater, and she worked in the colored section of the Plaza Theater, where we could go in the back door, walk up a long ramp, and then go in the back door, and we could go upstairs. We could sit up in the attic, or we could sit up in the bleachers, but we couldn't sit downstairs. But that's what we had to do to get there. But now the A-Score group was trying to get in the front door on the corner of Biltmore Avenue and the square. And that didn't happen. But they did it a number of times. They were forming at Roland's Jewelry Store, that's located on Market Street. When they leave school in the evening, they go there for training. And then they would go out into the varied stores downtown and the theater as well. So that initiative was going. But the Chamber's initiative was working because they've got this system going among the membership. And they had some yes, some maybe so, and some no. When they got to the end of it, they went back over to maybe so's. And when they brought the maybe so's in, then they went to those who said hell no. And the hell knows if anybody felt any different, they would let it be known. If not, they stayed in the hell no's, they let them stay there. They went all through the entire membership until they got down to just the hell no's, and the chamber called in the bankers. All of the bankers came in, and they wanted to know who of the hell knows that the banks had loaned money to.
Oh boy, that's good. Yes, okay, that's good. Yes.
You can imagine what happened then. Only one person of the hell knows held out. The others gradually migrated on the inside with everybody else. Say, yes, we will allow it to happen. That one person held out. I've got the names of these folk now. And a few names, you know, so I put those out there. It's all right. I'm going to hold this person's name a little bit longer. Okay?
Wow.
1965, Dick Dagenhart was invited to Atlanta, Georgia by Mayor Ivor Allen to talk to their Chamber of Commerce about what had happened here in Asheville. The word went out, what had happened here with the business community, what was happening as far as integration is concerned. They know. But again, it was not said, I knew about it. one or two Negroes I trust knew about the movement. But nobody else knew about what was going on. So Dagenhart's in, Mr. Dagenhart is in Atlanta. He made his presentation. And making his presentation, he told that membership who gave them the idea and kind of pushed them along to do what they were doing. So I was invited to Atlanta, Georgia, to make a presentation to the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. The word was brought to me by Mr. Richard K. Dagenhart. And when I refused to do it, there was alarm in Asheville because Richard K. Dagenhart went to others and say, Matthew refused to go to Atlanta and speak to the Chamber of Commerce. I hadn't told them why I would not do it. Then he came back to me and I explained to them that Dr. Martin Luther King, father, he, Ebenezer Baptist Church. I talked about Jose Williams, Reverend Salworth, all based in Atlanta. They are fanned out across the country working civil rights. That's their territory. And I didn't feel right or comfortable stepping into their area because it would be disrespectful for me to do that. Now, many people would have jumped on that opportunity. But I think about Negroes in general, how we need to work together and deport ourselves among each other. And because I have an opportunity to be lauded, to be written about, I want something bigger and better. I want something bigger and better for everybody. And there is one of my sayings that I developed back years ago. I try to find every day some way to help somebody. I'm doing it every day, today, every day.
Right now.
That's every day, yes. I'm looking for some way to help somebody. And I find it disdainful when I find another person who is in position to do something very similar, and they take the narrow road out, or they take the road of envy, jealousy that happens between people. Again, I have to go back to what was said a little bit earlier. Regardless to your racial content, we're better together. And I apply this. Didn't know it by these words. But that's what I've been doing and love it. And here's, I've never alone. Oh, I'm never alone. My experience is all the way present. There's another, I wrote this down from the film that I saw in there. And I may have missed something. But anyway, I'm going to use this. My experience here. I've already been successful helping other people. I've already been invited to the White House by President Nixon in 1970. Work with his administration, Small Business Administration, to assist them in coming up with a method that the government can apply to make Negro businesses across the country more successful. I'd already experienced going to the White House as a result of President Jimmy Carter in 1980. I've already experienced working with 38 governors around the country as a result of working with and for and being a key person of Governor Jim Hunt. I've already served as a consultant for 34 businesses, Asheville and other places. I've already been the mover and the shaker of the Chamber's initiative to bring about more employment for Negroes in Asheville and Buncombe County in 1967. In 1967, when employment was terrible for Negroes in Asheville and Buncombe County, the Chamber was looking at how can we make a difference. And they thought about going to Charlotte and some other places to encourage Negro businesses to move to Asheville like they do white businesses. Then somebody came up with the idea, Gene Oxenreiter, who was the mayor at the time, came up with the idea and said, no, why don't we develop our own? And from Gene Oxenreiter to the Socioeconomic Development Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Robert Matheson, they got together, Chamber, City, County, and the SBA, and they put together a process to develop a Negro-owned manufacturing company. This group brought in 27 key Negroes of Asheville, Buncombe County community. When I say key, meaning they went to what was called the Queen of the Crop, the doctors and the lawyers and all. Brought them in to help sell this initiative in 1968. When they came to me, I said no. And then they wanted to know why. No, I said, because to me it sounded like a white separatist movement. I will not take a part in it. By this time, all the dynamics and things were put together. And they had deadlines. Things were not going good. This was December of 1968. Kimberly Clark, the SBA, said, we have got to move this along, otherwise we're going to lose this opportunity to create a manufacturing company that's going to be owned and hire Negro as employees. Several of the chamber group came back to me again and say, Matthew, will you please come in and join us? We have 27 community pledge leaders and they're not doing very well selling the program to our community. They're not doing very well selling stock in the new proposed company. We need you to come and help us. I finally decided yes. And in January of 1969, January 1969, I joined them. And a short while thereafter, they met their deadline. Their deadline of selling stock to people in the Negro community. Their deadline to raise the money to get be eligible for seed capital from the SBA. That story is, I have a few copies I'm leaving for you. And from that point, it became a reality. April 15th, 1969, everything was together. And now we're on our way to have the first manufacturing company of its kind owned by Negroes in America. In America. There is a company by the name of The Wedge. There are 28 small businesses in it now. That is the building that I was renting eventually. Renting to own. Afram Incorporated, the first corporation manufactured for Kimberly-Clark, Johnson & Johnson, and Procter & Gamble. From 1969, July, set up, to 1973, the company did very well, but it ran into some problems. So the company now has got to decide to go out of business or get some more money, lots of money. At this time, the chamber, the city, and the county had gotten together and said, well, we don't see how we're going to make it, so let's go talk to Matthew.
There you go.
They came and talked to Matthew and said, listen, we don't see how you can make it. We don't see how we can make it. We have already obtained employment for you with Kimberly-Clark in Neenah, Wisconsin. So the only thing you have to do is, they didn't want to say it. I mean, walk away. We got you covered. And I said no. Now they got to go back. They went back to the drawing board. They came back the second time and said, listen, we've got this, and you let it go. While they were doing all that, I was already working on another plan. I worked on another plan going to the same company that was having to leave because we were not able to supply them any longer because we're going to be out of business because the SBA was foreclosing on us because we missed a few SBA payments for money that we had borrowed to buy the machinery and equipment. I went to Kimberly-Clark and asked them to loan me $15,000. Johnson & Johnson, same thing now. The Afram Incorporated was owned by 356 stockholders, Negro stockholders, which means that at this point, everybody loses their money because the company's going out. Chamber, city, county, they're working like mad trying to find out some kind of resolve, and I am also. Kimberly-Clark, Johnson & Johnson said, if you can pull it off, we will loan you the money. The SBA came in, they posted a sign on the window saying about the public outcry. Public outcry means auctioning. The employees didn't know what was going on. They're working upstairs. I talked to the board of five-person board of directors. I said, you all go to our attorney, set up a new corporation. Right now. The sale was at 11 o'clock. By 3 o'clock, they had a new corporation. We won the bid. We bought all this new equipment that cost $67,000. We bought it all back in during the bidding process for pay off the county taxes. It was $1,200 and some dollars. And we won the bid for $16,000. The company became Asheville Community Enterprise, ACE Corporation. At about 3 o'clock that day, the employees didn't know one word about this. And from that point, we moved forward. From June 1973, we moved forward as ACE Incorporated until 1979. By that time, lots of manufacturing companies had started moving offshore. Some goods were coming from offshore into America much cheaper than what we could make it. So Johnson & Johnson was going to be moving out, but they were going to make us whole before doing so. So the board of directors got together and they said, well, we can't make it if Johnson & Johnson's leaving. But I had another idea. So we went through the process. We met with Kimberly-Clark, met with Johnson & Johnson. So I decided at that point then, what I'll do is make a bid to buy in certain machinery and equipment from that company since they're going to sell. And I did so. We had the stockholders meeting. The stockholders agreed. They authorized it. And at that point, the company became MB Disposables, Matthew Bacoate Jr. This was 79, 1980. I owned the company until 1993. Did extremely well until 1989. 1989, Governor Bill Clinton decided that he was going to seek the Democratic nomination for president. And he started campaigning. He said that he was going to, through the Department of Commerce, they were going to invest $50 million per year to bring in what is called Buy America, meaning bring the offshore companies back to America, for American companies to stop buying offshore goods. So I've got a good work staff, and right here on time to go, and he said that, so okay, I believed him. And the reason that I believed him, because in 1983, June the 16th at Raleigh Marriott, Governor Jim Hunt invited his 14 key people, I was one, to meet with Governor Bill Clinton at that time on a Sunday morning for breakfast. And we ate breakfast, and the governor said, I wanted Governor Clinton to meet you all, and I want you all to meet Governor Clinton, because one day he will be president of the United States. This is 1983. In 1992, he was president of the United States. But when he got in office, one of the first executive orders was NAFTA. And NAFTA further exacerbated what was already happening with offshore. So therefore, I succumbed in 1993. But we had 24 years of operations owned by Negroes. There were 100, according to the SBA, there were over 100 manufacturing companies started since 1955. The only company lasted more than 3 or 4 years was a watch manufacturing company in California. It lasted 8 years. All the others bit the dust much earlier. But we were able to hold on here. And we've got that reputation, even though it's 3 different companies, it never stopped. We've got that reputation of being able to maintain our own here, and a manufacturing company that employed 88 employees that had to be paid every week on time. The product we made were called medical devices, which means we're under the FDA, and we never had a shipment questioned or sent back. The entire time. We never missed a payroll, never had a check bounce. That's unheard of, because many major corporations in the Asheville and Buncombe County, I know they had problems, and the banks had to pump them up until they could get cash in. But that's one of the things that the chamber was responsible for. We carried through, that Asheville can take solace in the fact that we had the only manufacturing company that lasted as long as it did. Now, we had a problem here at Asheville High in 1969 when the 2 schools were coming together. Stevens Lee was going to be closed, and everybody was going to have to go to Lee Evans High School, which became Asheville High. So we're moving through getting that process ready, and how is this going to be handled with the least amount of disruption? As we know, and I'm going to fast forward this one, we know that the students rose up and walked out at a time when the police were present, and the police beat a lot of the students up. This brought about mass pandemonium in the area. We had meetings at the YWCA immediately, a meeting after this ordeal down at the high school. And we listened to the students about how they were beat up by the police. We listened to the reason why they were rising up against it. We know that there was a human relations office that was in place, but it had not been chartered. So the human relations office had to go to work immediately during this September date in order to hear these complaints at the YWCA. That human relations office was 18 people that was brought together by the chamber of the city and the county, and the person that designed that human relations council was Matthew Bacoate. A documentary that was produced by ABC 1970, it is present today, I understand, and you all might try it. It's called Help. It's 38 minutes, and it tells the story of the economic development process and what I'm telling you all about now about the high school and what happened down there. But we never had in Asheville a situation wherein Negroes burned down buildings, burned down houses. That never happened. Even though we had that period, it was a really rough period. It didn't get so bad that we just took over neighborhoods and just was disruptive. Asheville was able to find a way to move through these rough spots. Asheville was able to find a way to move through Winn-Dixie when we boycotted Winn-Dixie. Asheville moved through that. They moved through it because as demonstrations were going forward on College Street, where Winn-Dixie was located, the Chamber of Commerce was calling the owners of Winn-Dixie saying, you got to do something about it. Asheville never had a burning of buildings except 3 buildings that were burned in East End. One was vacant, one was a factory, and there were two buildings, houses that didn't have no residents. They burned, baby burn, but destroying people property, that never happened in Asheville, Buncombe County. We had a rough day here many times from a racial standpoint, but we made it through. We made it through to a new day. We made it through wherein Asheville now is recognizing that Negroes do count. We can take a look at that as a result of we've got 3 Negroes on city council. We've never had but one, and it was the general rule we have one at some point in time, all the time we could. We've got a Negro city manager. We've had a Negro mayor. Today we've got a Negro county manager. We've got a Negro county commissioner and a sheriff. These things have really improved the visibility of Asheville and Buncombe County. It was a rough coming up to this day, but we're finally here. We found a way to do it. And I guess those people who was responsible for it, I idolized them. When I say idolize them, it was folks who decided that they were going to join a part and be a part of being one people, giving the other people who never had an opportunity, giving them an opportunity to be real people in our community, real people among themselves. Today, we are recognized, even though people say we got a long ways to go. I don't say we got a long ways to go. Yes, we got to continue to improve. Regardless of how long it takes, we've got every day find some kind of way to work together and not go back. I believe that what I heard here this morning, if we can hear it again, we're better together if we just adopt that, and I'm taking it forward. Wherever I go, I'm taking it forward. We are better together. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate it. It's been great being before you.
Your sharing. So what I choose to know is if there are people in this audience who have something that they choose to share, any questions that you have that have come up for you, anything you'd like to have clarification on. If Mr. Bacoate, if he's okay with answering questions,
Whatever.
we can
Yes.
feel free to take the next
Yes.
bit and have him share further.
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Okay.
Yes.
Sir, what is it that you know that we forgot?
Okay. I am an opportunist. I'm an optimistic opportunist. And I ask everyone here, find a way to take advantage of a situation that may seem impossible and go in and make it work. Listen, it's easy when you're willing to work hard. It's easy when you're willing to sacrifice. I'm not going to recommend to anybody here to live like I do in one respect, and that is I sleep about 2.5 hours out of 24 hours.
God.
Every day.
I want whatever he's eating.
I eat chocolate layer cake. Yellow batter. Not a slice, but a honk. In a large bowl. Strawberry ice cream on top of that. Slice of a banana on top of that. At 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember not seeing the time about 4:15 this morning. But I also remember seeing the time at 5 minutes after 7. I'm looking right at the time this morning. I needed to call Sherry, so I waited a little bit later to call her this morning. So I want you to sacrifice some time, but not like I do. Every day, and I have to say this one more time, every day, I feel good about what I do. I feel good that I'm not only able to help Negroes, I'm able to help white people too. And when I'm helping both, I'm helping everybody. And that's the attitude we've got to have. The other thing is, I'm not jealous nor envious of anybody or anything, anytime. So that's an attitudinal thing that you must embrace. But not chocolate layer cake. But that's my yellow batter only, though. Yes, ma'am.
Would you be willing to comment on what we're seeing now to disenfranchise certain people to vote?
I'm sorry.
Would you be willing to comment on how we're seeing certain places are trying to disenfranchise?
Yes, I'll comment on it. But here, what you're going to get here, is many years of experience. Many years of working in the trenches in politics. My first venture was with Dr. John Holt in 1968. And since that time, I've been heavily involved in politics. And I'm heavily involved in people having the right to vote. I believe that it has been a panacea for us. But the way it's being handled today, we've got to think, stop and think, wait a minute. Who's right and who's wrong? We've got two sides here. And each side is calling each other out. It's up to the American people. The American people are going to have to rise up and change some thinking of our representatives, because we're being misled by many politicians in Washington, D.C. in particular. Our lives are not being handled, represented the way they should be, based on what America's supposed to be all about. Our lives are in jeopardy, not because a lot of things that we are doing, but because of what those folks that we've sent to Washington and to the state, the way that they are handling the propositions that should be making life better for us. When it comes to the voting, charges, counter-charges, courts involved, and I've not heard one person to give an answer that made sense on either side. Again, quality of candidate is extremely important. And that's something that I just sent to the national office, Democratic office anyway. Candidates that we select, we have got to be more choosy. We've got to do everything we can to find out if the candidate is going to represent our best interests or going to represent a selfish interest, or going to represent an interest for some major corporations, or, as the charges are, going to represent some interest of some foreign country. We should never be there, but we are. And many people are not saying anything about it, but we have better listen up. And say, my vote doesn't count. Yes, it does count. And it also counts to talk to each other. And if my opinion is different from yours, don't get angry. Just go somewhere else.
I'd like to know your opinion, your thoughts on this current dialogue on critical race theory and how it's affecting our education system.
Yes. You know, I'm looking at that very carefully. I try not to speak about something until I've had a chance to examine it thoroughly. I'm hearing this side, I'm hearing the other side. I'm listening to the media. I'm Googling. I get newspapers from other places, and I read what reporters are, how they're identifying. And critical race theory, to be very candid with you, I just don't know at the moment. Because I'm reading it and I'm studying it. And the argument between the two sides, to me, just doesn't meet muster enough for me to go one way or the other. And believe me, I try to be, and again, here's another thing. You all heard this years ago in school about I. I really hate to use I a lot, but I've been involved a lot. So therefore, it's necessary to say I. It's not selfish. It's not me, but I. And I just haven't researched it enough to even try to give an opinion. But I am going to continue. Okay? But thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
Sir, may I ask you, what is, in your opinion, what is the state of black business in Asheville today?
Oh, the black business today. Thank you, sir, so much. Before you, there are 47 businesses here. That's the block. All of those are Negro-owned businesses. All of those business owners, I happen to know all of them. They all made a little money. I've been heavily involved with the YMI law for many years in key positions. The history, and there is dialogue that go along with this. This is a healthy Negro business neighborhood, community. At the same time, there are arteries of grocery stores and coal yards throughout Asheville. I've got a number that something like 130, 140 different businesses that once were. I did a survey, my personal survey, 3 years ago, 2.5 mile radius of downtown Asheville Square. I identified 1,268 white businesses. I only identified 35 Negro. So to answer your question about the state of our businesses, even though today is a different day, we're supposed to be more knowledgeable. We're supposed to know how to work together, network, to make our businesses more and stronger. Something is not happening. The mix of our businesses is still not diversified enough. Most of our businesses are still service-connected businesses, what I call traditional businesses, which means that our business community is not healthy. The city has a minority business program. The county now has adopted a minority business program. The county paid me to develop a minority business program for them in 1991. Certain recommendations were made that were not adhered to. Today, the city purchases $68 million a year in goods and services. But the past 3 years, the report that has come from them about businesses they've done with minority businesses, in particular Negro businesses. And let me see if I can't do this minority right. When white women became minorities in 1993, many white businesses became female-owned overnight. I fought against it because white women are not in the minority. White women are in the majority the same as their husbands and brothers and other folks are. White do not run into the impediments that the Negro does. So how can you categorize them a minority community with a Negro who is really not only second-hand class citizen, but discounted to a certain extent, in particular when it comes to certain metrics that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So we don't have a healthy business community at all today. And that's another thing that's so troubling, because we're supposed to be more knowledgeable. And while we're cooperating in some areas we are not. and business happen to be one. And that's a major area that we need to be finding some kind of way to make that much more healthier. Reparations that you hear a lot talk about now, I don't subscribe to reparation. Because reparation gives the people who are talking about it, supposed to administer such, if it can be done, gives them too many ways out. Congressman John Conyers hired 16 lawyers in 1991 to study reparation. They're still studying it.
Good job if you did.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas hired lawyers in 2016 to study reparation. They're still studying it. Asheville received notoriety that you never thought possible a little over a year ago when they announced reparation. It went all over America. I've had people to call me. Wow, you're ahead of time. Reparation, you're going to pay reparation. You know, think about it. I said this to the city fathers and all. I said, you all think about it. And these different groups is together. There's 5 that I know about. I said, y'all think about it. You're giving the person who's proposing it that way out. Because legally, when you get to the end of this deal, John Conyers' attorneys haven't come up with an answer. Sheila Jackson Lee's hasn't come up with an answer. There are others that's working on it, and they haven't found a way to do it. And when you're talking about an individual project that you're going to use city, county, tax dollars to fund, and it doesn't incorporate all of the people who would have been affected by what happened historically from slavery. Reparation means you make everybody whole who was affected. And individual projects won't do it, which means that the law will not back it up. There's no law there that's going to hold it. I tell all of, please, you all, call it something else. Name it something else now. Because the city's proposal right now, they're supposed to bring back an answer in about 16 months. Yeah. If they stay under reparation, when you come back in 16 months, the law is not going to support it. Unless you've found a way to include every person that was affected from years back and their ancestors down through the years will be a part of reparation today. The other thing, too, what are you going to do about what happened 140 years ago and the folk today who knew nothing about it, had nothing to do with it? That's a whole nother legal battle that's got to be fought. Maybe their parents did, but they haven't. And you're talking about paying it today. You're paying it today out of today's dollars. There's just so many loopholes that can be used when we're talking about reparation. That's just my personal.
I was wondering if there happens to be a list or somewhere we can find out to be able to support the black businesses around town. Is there a list somewhere that we can find to be able to support?
Thank you. You didn't know me, but you act like you know me. Because I'm in the process right now of directing that. They haven't had one. So now, reparation. Yes, I did say this to the city and several of these groups. I said, okay, we want to do some reparation. Okay, give some money so that we can put several people out there to go and do the research into the Negro businesses. Get every one of them listed. Get every one of them listed in terms of its goods and our service. And also about its current day business strength, to see if it is one that is worth pushing forward or whether they need to reconfigure or get out. I'm also stating to them, I said this to the Negro ministers, let's get a comprehensive directory. You don't have it. So you're talking about reparation. Okay, there's a way. Use some money to do something like that. I'm sure that we can find enough leeway in the law to do that, because that's not giving anybody anything tangibly. What you're doing is educating, information. And we really need what you just stated a moment ago. It's coming because I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it, do you happen to know, are you gonna put it online, or is it gonna be in the paper, or how is it gonna get out there?
Well, you know, I do both, but I'm still a fingers and toes person. You know what that means? Yeah. Okay, the old way. It's hard copy. So we're going to put out directories, and yes, online, but
Like the Mountain Express, maybe, something to where everybody can.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a great question, and your mind is working right with mine, and when you get two minds working like ours, something's going to happen. You know, we just met each other. I believe in you, you believe in me. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
And we are better together.
That's right.
That's right.
Just a quick question. As many of us white folks are just starting to wake up to the atrocities that we've been, most of us passively involved in, and realizing there's got to be some change. It's just in order to be a decent person. How can you, and you're only 10 years older than I am, so we both have a lot of moss on the backside of our tree, but how can you forgive what has gone on in your 91 years, as far as forgiving the white people, loving us and working with us?
You know, that's, to me, it's so easy. I have always felt that I'm smart as anybody else, and smarter than most. The reason that I don't sleep much, because I'm studying. I'm researching. So that impedes most people, much of it is mental, because folks allow it to get here. You have to make a commitment to yourself. Number one, you got to be true to yourself. Number two, you got to be willing to work and put in the time that's necessary to make changes for yourself first. Now you're getting yourself in position to come over and talk to you and get you to buy into what we need to do together. And this helps a person to keep from being bitter. I went through the President Harry Truman in 1948 declared that the military would integrate. And 1950 they started putting it in place. So I went and served in the military. It was difficult. A Negro going into the military in all white everything. Everybody that gave you instructions was white. Everything that you did came from a white person. And many of them hadn't gotten the word that President Truman wanted to act a little bit different. So they still had that meanness. I was in a company wherein a number of people had to be sent to psychiatric care. I know of a couple of people that was didn't make it through, and they received medical discharges, not good medical, because of mental states that they became under because of the way they were treated in the military. I was treated rough. I was told at one point that as long as I remained a nigger, I would never receive any rank. And this is from layered field grade white officers in the military. I didn't get angry. That was the way he felt. That was his ignorance. It wasn't going to stop me from doing what I needed to do and to be smarter than he. And I continued to take every course that I could when I was in the military and had the time after Korea. And I had time to go to school, I did. When I had time to take a course in public speaking, I did. Because I wanted to, once I get all this information that I need, I want to be able to convey it. And I wanted to be effective in doing so. So I laughed at the people who thought they were getting over on me with through their meanness. I laughed at them in this way. I outdid them. And this is what I tell people now when I talk to them. I talk to everybody. Don't be afraid to put forth a little bit of time so that you can inform yourself, fortify yourself mentally. If you fortify yourself mentally, and I'm not a psychiatrist, you fortify yourself physically. Because what goes up here affects this down here. You keep this now healthy, to work on this for you and keep it healthy. And you need both of them in order to migrate through the fields that we have to so often, in particular the Negro. And the other thing that I say to the Negro, please, Mr. and Mrs. Negro, stop being jealous. Stop being envious. Stop being selfish. I'm going to take my marbles home because you don't agree with me. Leave a few marbles there, because you do not have to totally disagree because you disagree on one thing. You don't have to take yourself out of the game because I don't like this one thing. Because look at all this other that we have to work on, and we could work together, and we can work together. We just have to allow ourselves to do so. And it's important for us to do it so that we can get it to you. We've got a lot of new people in Asheville and Buncombe County. And many of them, the question you just asked, many folk feel that way. I have people that tell, I didn't do nothing 40 years ago, but I want to do something now. They may not be physically able, but they are. And that's what's needed. Now, what we've got to do is have ourselves in position so that we can attract that and bring it this way and utilize it properly enough to make a difference in our lives. Because you can't make our lives, we have to make that. And this, well, what else is it you do or don't do? To be honest with you, I try to do everything every day. Because somebody over here needs something a little different from somebody over there. And I'm trying to deal with it. And they say I do a pretty good job because I'm inundated with folk coming back, white in particular. And I'm happy to share whatever I have that they feel they can use. And I'm loving being here with you all, sharing whatever I've, yes, sir.
I'm originally from Los Angeles. I grew up in a very mixed environment. All of my father's friends were black. I joined the military, like you, and I lived in Virginia for 28 years. And when I bought my second house there, I had a black farmer that farmed the land. He owned the land and farmed it behind my house. And one day he came over to visit me, and he came through the trees with his hands in the air. And I can't imagine anyone feeling like they are not safe. And I told him he could come to the door, because for me, you're equal. I don't care what the color of your skin is. You're a human being. You can come to the door. How do we as a community, invite people to feel safe enough that you and I can be friends?
Okay.
That's what I want to know.
Yes. Yes. Here I go again. I tell people every day, when you meet somebody, I don't care how you feel. I don't care what happened earlier. If you're in position to meet somebody, you should be in a position to smile. You should be in position to put a pleasant expression on your face. If it's so bad that you got to go back to it, then wait till you're past that person. That ugliness is never, they're never faced with that. The other thing, speak. Speak. And speak gentle. Speak with some truth in your heart, because it comes through different from, oh, hey. Once you do that, if you can have some kind of just some talk a little bit. And then when each of you talk a little more. Then if it looks like it's going to be a long time before you see them, find a way to talk a little more to that person. If a stranger lives somewhere else, I'm talking about this neighborhood, okay? Because the only way that your real being is going to be where you want it to be, you got to get hard in it. Until you get hard, you don't have nothing. I want people to understand that. Hey, that ain't nothing. But you got to get a way to communicate. Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing. I hope you're good today. I hope things are going well with you. Okay? Then you respond back. Just that alone releases all negativism that's going on within you. Positivity will assist where medicine won't. Because what does many doctors do today before they do procedures? They pray with people. They do. Medical science has found that if it's a religious person and you connect with them religiously, where their body may not be able to stand all what you're going to be putting in there, something happens. And they're having better results with patients in many of these procedures. So we've got to find, let's try it. Let's connect. What used to happen, that doesn't have to come into the equation today. Smile. And again, if you have to go back to it, wait till you're past that person where they don't see it and get ugly again.
I've gotten into trouble in the past for filling out forms, and when they say race, I say human. I've never said anything but human when they say race. You know, and I've gotten into trouble for that. They said, how can we keep track of our records? How can we know who's doing what? Mm-hmm. And I say, well, that's all that I am.
Yes.
All that I am is human.
Yes.
I'm completely human. And if everybody did that, we'd mess up their statistics.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
We would mess up their statistics.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they was filling out a form for like a bank or something, they asked for title, I'd put Empress. Or I'd put janitor, because I was bold.
Yeah.
But, there are ways of like screwing up the statistics that screw us all up.
Yes. Well, you go back to the 90s, the 80s, 87s to 95s. There was a period when the government was stymied. They were trying to figure out how to address certain people on their forms. Then finally they decided to put African American and black. Finally. But there was mass pandemonium and turmoil everywhere, trying to find an identity that fit in with the majority, or acceptable. We've had to go through so many different exercises to try to understand and try to get along. Now it's time for us to start locking in on some specifics. And the only way we can lock in on specifics is to start with us. Once you get us, you, me, get us, our minds set where I'm going to do better. I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to do the kind of things that's necessary for it to rub off on somebody else, that I want them to feel good. And it doesn't take all day and all night to do this. Just a little bit of time in the day. Or when you meet somebody, you're going to meet different people. Say something nice and with a nice monotone. And find ways to see a person a second or third time. If it's like somebody you want to connect with, or you should connect with, or you want to develop a connection, and it's a person that lives in the community or the neighborhood, when you meet, then meet. I'm so-and-so and so. Yes, I live across the street, 34. Let the person know that you don't mind them knowing who you are. Because so many people, they'll give you the name and nothing else. Just cut blank. I'm John. Gone. Don't want you to have the last name. That means they don't want you to follow up. They don't want you coming back. But we've got to get more of that. How many civil rights have been passed in America? 7 since 1954. Civil rights bills have been passed, telling us, our government, telling us how we should deport ourselves. Okay? Now, we adhere to it because it is the law. The law causing you to deport yourself the way that you ought to deport yourself, just being a human being. And that will never happen until you get what involved? That's another thing people don't. They think is just carried in their mind, and I'm going to like you. You've got to. We have to. And I make it a point. Now, do you run into that person you don't want to see again? Yes, you do. Yeah. You may try one more time. But there's not no second chance after that second chance when it comes to that particular person, because your mind, your intuition might be right. Just let that one go. But look at all of the other folks See, there are more good people that don't know they're good people because they won't allow themselves to be good people. That's what we have to do, I think. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bacoate, I am a member of Better Together, and I guess we're all better together, but some of us, have been with it since day one.
Yeah.
Some people come and go. But when I say I'm a member of Better Together, it is a cause for me. And it's been a healing process for me. Because I grew up in Atlanta, and y'all know my story, come from the black bubble, and then I come here and it's like a totally different thing. But I'm grateful I was led to this center because I felt embraced, I felt the love and everything.
Yes.
So just on behalf of Better Together, I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for your message. And we'd like to have you back again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you.
You're a great wonder.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. It has been, it's better than wonderful being here experiencing the time that we have together. From the time that I turned off the main road and entered the down spiral into the parking area. When I was really, there was something that just kind of came over me, not a veil, but it was like a very smooth, soft wind.
An embrace.
That just kind of enveloped me. And by the time that I landed in the parking lot and turned the key off, I rolled the windows down. A fresh breeze was coming through. And believe me, my mind became refreshed. I could feel it. I felt little chemicals and things moving around. There's something going on in this valley. And I experienced it. I experienced it when we were in the main chapel. I was sitting there taking in everything that was going on. And I saw a new world. I saw some different people. And it seemed to me like I saw something genuine that I haven't seen in some other places. It wasn't a whole lot of word and hooping and hollering, but everything was like choreographed. I got more notes from in there that I'm taking out of this valley into the higher lands. And I'm going to see if I can't inherit it all around to others. I appreciate you all so much. It has really been great. Sure.
I just choose to thank Mr. Bacoate for being willing to come share with us, because there are very few who've had the years of experience and seen the changes and just driven through everything. So you all know who've been in Better Together. We meet every second and fourth Sunday. So if you have an interest or a desire to come together and just create connection and conversation and friendships that we take out into our real life, that's what we're here to do. Because you can only love people that you know and you break bread with and have deep, honest, true, connected conversation. And that's what we're here to create. That's what we appreciate about all of this. So here is Mr. Bacoate sharing from decades ago up until right now, and we get to take all of this out into the world because he's a representation of all of us, okay? And we get to take that out into our world. When he said to speak and say hello, extend your hand in friendship, just open up in our everyday world. Open up. I don't care who it is, where you are, every opportunity, every day, and every moment. Open up. Just be the presence in every opportunity. That's all I ask. Okay. and we create change. We create change wherever we are. So I'm grateful. Mr. Bacoate gave me one of his cards and says, here's to you. Live every day like it's your last. Help someone along the way. And on the back, his card says, my contribution to our society since 1950 has been to encourage dialogue and bring about a better understanding between all races wherever I have traveled. So do you remember in all of our prosperity classes, or really when John would talk about mission? Here's Mr. Bacoate's mission. He has it in writing, and when he hands it out, he shares that with everyone. So he's clear that he's living on his purpose, living on his mission. So I'm just kudos. Thank you all for coming.